we want to get the content to people that even if they don't reach out to us and become a client, we can help people, because if they take one or two pieces of that information and they can implement it on their own, how much more successful are they going to be? And then on the flip side, once they get to a more senior position or they get down the road and their affairs become more complex, they're going to remember that we had provided that information even if we've never spoke. There's been plenty of individuals that we've met over the years who will download white papers, who'll download blogs, who'll ask for information. And then it's interesting because 4 years down the road, they'll be like, hey, I'm ready for a conversation. Yeah. And so you can't force people to be ready, but you can be there when they are. And that's really the route we take with building our relationships.
I love that. You're playing a long game. Welcome back to another episode of The Advisor Journey. I'm your co-host, Desarte Yarnway, and today you're in for a treat. I got my man, Tim Farley, in the building. Tim, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, man.
Really appreciate you guys having us.
No, thanks for coming. We appreciate you. I nerded out when trying to learn about you. I love what you're doing with your firm. I think you and your team have the entrepreneurial spirit. We'll get into that a little later, but I just wanted you to introduce yourselves to the advisors that are listening right now.
Yeah, so my name is Tim Farley. I am one of the founding principals of Tempo Wealth, which is a local RA in Independence, Cleveland area in Ohio. And my two business partners, Garrah and Corbin Blackburn, and I founded Tempo actually just a few months ago, May of 2025. And firm size, we have 11 employees. We manage about $650 million to $700 million in client assets currently. And we really wanted to just build something unique, and we wanted to do it in a way that allows other people the opportunity to grow and service a specific client base that we feel we can excel at.
Right. I think to understand Tempo, from what I researched, we gotta go back, right? Because this has been a journey to get to the place where you start a new firm, you have three partners, you out the gate 650, 700 million in assets under management. But take us back to the beginning. How did you get into the industry? And then we'll kind of timestamp it back to this point when you started Tempo.
So it's unique because when you're living it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, some of the things that happen, but it makes a lot of sense when you go in reverse. So if we look back in, I think my colleague Bernie started in the industry in 1996, and then he joined our former firm in 2001, and that was a traditional broker-dealer model. By the time 2010 happened, when I joined, he had already built up his personal practice, so he was pretty successful on his own. And so what I think was unique is I joined it because it was right after the recession, real estate market collapsed, all of this, and I'm like, okay, how do I build a business, and how do I work for a company or do something where no one's going to control what I have the ability to do in the future? And so how do I take that entrepreneurial background and really make something of it? It was interesting because Bernie and I didn't really talk at first. And so we built our relationship over the 6 a.m. coffee conversations where we're two of the first people in the firm and, in the mornings, and he'd walk by me in my little cubicle when he's going to his office, and we'd stop and we'd talk, and we just built a friendship initially. And then we started doing a couple cases together, working on some clients. I'd say, he was kind of a mentor to me in that time of my life and career. And then you fast forward a couple more years, and then Corbin joined in 2012, and then full-time in 2013. He sat behind me in the cubicle. So we built a friendship and a relationship, and then him and Bernie started working together, and me and him started working together. And so we started having these synergies, right? And it was unique because it was based on a friendship and a mutual respect, and then business came all after that.
Yeah, you are taking me back to my early days as an investment manager. Those cubicles, right? That's where the real relationship buildings go down.
It was the grind. It was the grind at that time.
You're grinding. Yeah. I mean, you're dealing with firm politics and bureaucracy in some cases, and you're just trying to slog through, right? So I feel like a lot of advisors that have broken away and started their firms have those early experiences. You build those relationships over time, and you just never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, and I don't think if you would have looked at us in 2013, we would know we were going to be here today.
Yeah, for sure. But you're in a good spot. I wanted to talk about your niche. Serving executives, right? Largely what we've seen is that people that specialize are having massive success right now because there's just clear way to differentiate yourself amongst other financial advisors. Talk to us about why you chose executives and how your firm uniquely serves that client demographic.
So it was really a natural progress. So, Bernie had a big relationship with a large public company locally. So he was already building his client base in that end. I remember talking to him because I was referred to an individual at the public company I'm directly involved with. And I'm like asking him for advice on the conversation because I was referred to the individual for life insurance. So I go, I meet with him, and we're having this conversation, and it becomes so apparent that he's done so much in his planning. On a scale of 1 to 10, he's probably a 9 with what he's done so far. A pretty senior person. And the conversation was, Jeff, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I don't actually think you need this. And with what you're telling me, it sounds like you've done a pretty good job with everything. And he's like, I appreciate it. You're honest. You're telling me what I need to hear, not necessarily what I want to hear. Where the conversation shifted, and I think this is where it changed my entire career path, was a question that we had talked about prior, which was, you've done all this great planning. If something were to by any chance happen to you, what's your confidence level that your spouse can follow the plan you put in place? Yeah. And he stopped and he paused. I remember the conversation like it was yesterday, and we still joke about it today. And he was saying, I'm probably a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, she could figure out where the accounts are, but her ability to manage what we've done existing, to change the plan to account for just her and our children, very different type of conversation to be had, right? And so he was like, something like that would be insanely valuable to me. So that was what led me into that space, because then he had hired us with the trust of building the actual plan or the roadmap. And then from there, all the little things that may have been missed along the way, how do we shore those up? But then at the same time, take his spouse and integrate her into the conversation. So now they're both on the same page about, here's what it looks like now. If something happens to one of us, here's then what it looks like. And here's the relationship that can facilitate all of that, so that instead of you having to make decisions during a period of uncertainty or grief or whatever it may be, we already have that built out.
Absolutely. When I think about those type of clients, right? Because just think about that profile. Executive, probably already a self-starter, probably is going to try to do as much as they can before seeking out help, has had success, so maybe a little bit of bravado, right, that comes with that. But when you are able to show that sort of client their blind spots, that's insanely valuable. And I think that's what advice is, right? Like, you've done a lot, but these are things that you can do to shore up or, enhance your circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. The people we work with and that trust us, they're very intelligent people. So they know to save into their retirement plans. Where the gaps come is, how do we become more efficient in this regard? Or, what are the strategies that maybe we're missing here that the company even provides but doesn't necessarily share? Because you're looking at a very small segment of the population. So you have a company that's maybe 50,000 employees, right? Well, you turn that into the stock eligible employees, maybe that's 15,000 of them. And then you say, senior level, maybe that's 5,000. And so you're in a very small demographic there, where there's opportunities that are presented to them that maybe they don't know about. And so how do we maximize what they're already doing and add to it and complement it?
Mm-hmm. All right. So for the advisor that is listening right now that wants to sort of get in this space, what are some must-haves? Because I feel like I can list a couple, such as understanding a person's compensation agreement, right? But what are some things to definitely try to get to know within an organization if you want to serve executive demographic?
Embrace yourself in the culture. Company cultures are very different. So the company that I'm more ingrained with right now is a very analytical company. They're decision drivers by data. They are much more in that end of things compared to some of the companies my colleagues are involved in. They have some analytical aspects to it, but it's maybe more sales driven, maybe more personality driven or relationship driven. So understanding the culture, understanding what drives the culture. And then, to be honest, I think the biggest thing that we did is we did all the work other people don't want to do. We read the summary plan descriptions front to back. We read benefit plan manuals. We asked for meetings with HR. We tried to learn everything that isn't what everyone else knows. And so all those intricacies, and then being able to formulate that and being able to provide advice or value, whether they're clients of ours or not, on here's some things you can consider doing.
Right, you went the distance, right? You outworked and did the things that people don't want to do. I mean, that makes for great athletes, right? And also for great advisors. This is a very hard to get sort of population. And in addition to that, I'm sure you're marketing in some way. Right? Talk to us about what you do to kind of top of the funnel, fill top of funnel, and then eventually acquire those clients.
That's what's so interesting and unique about our firm, and also what I would say is also a gap in ours. We've never done marketing. We've never had any paid marketing. I think the extent of our marketing has been, we host a client or two event a year to get people in the same room and feel comfortable with us and view us more as just an advisor, view us as family, view us as we're a central point of contact. What my colleagues and I would all say is we have relationships with these clients where we will go out to dinner with them, where our wives are friends with them. And so I think that really changes the dynamic of a relationship, because they know just as much about me or my business partners as we do about them.
Yeah.
So it's an even playing field. From a more of a drip marketing standpoint, we do white papers, we do blog posts. I think the white papers are a huge driver, and we've seen significant results with it, but it's not necessarily about gaining the client through the white paper. It's about providing information that may not be public in an easy to understand manner, and then allowing anyone who has these questions to download it for free.
Okay, so I think there's something there, right? Because in order for the white paper to work, there has to be a system that either captures information, right? You have to have a delightful website for people to want to visit in the first place or spend time on to see where the white paper is. Talk to me about how you position all of that.
So when we opened up Tempo, and I'll shout out to Will Steiner on this, he provided us an introduction to the individual that's creating our website, Ongoing, and working with Tom has been awesome. Yeah. I mean, it was, how do we make something that's visually appealing, but not so complex, where it quickly says exactly what we do and the type of people we work with, and then it goes into pages specific to the companies we're involved with. And then from there, company works at ABC, an individual works at ABC Company, they can click into their company specific page of the website and say, here are the 6 top concerns most people have. Well, 1 and 2 apply to me, or maybe 4 applies to me. Well, now here's a white paper tied to that specific concern, and then it allows a flow of, they can choose the information that's valuable to read. And our goal with it is twofold. One is we want to get the content to people that, even if they don't reach out to us and become a client, we can help people, because if they take 1 or 2 pieces of that information and they can implement it on their own, how much more successful are they going to be? And then on the flip side, once they get to a more senior position or they get down the road and their affairs become more complex, they're going to remember that we had provided that information even if we've never spoke.
Yeah.
And so, there's been plenty of individuals that we've met over the years who will download white papers, who'll download blogs, who'll ask for information. And then it's interesting because 4 years down the road, they'll be like, hey, I'm ready for a conversation.
Yeah.
And so you can't force people to be ready, but you can be there when they are. And that's really the route we take with building our relationships.
I love that. You're playing a long game. But I do have to double down on what you just said. And I want all the advisors to listen to this, right? You are making content, essentially, white papers that allow people to identify themselves in your content, right? And I think one of the things that advisors do wrong, or a pitfall that they have when marketing or doing a drip campaign or just trying to educate their demographic, is they're saying all the things that we do, right? Like, we do estate planning, we can connect with your CPA, we do investment management, all of these things that doesn't identify with the person that's on the other side of the screen. But instead, you're saying, hey, we serve these companies. That's one identification point, right? These are the problems that people have. They can sort of self-select which problems that they have, right? And then you become this trusted advisor because now you know how to deal with these problems, right? So I think that advisors, as you market or as you create this funnel, you have to take yourself out of it. Almost. You have to say, hey, this is not about what we can do, but saying, we see your problems, and when the time is right, as you said, we are capable, right, and equipped to solve them.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think having a specific market that you ingrain yourself with is hugely valuable in today, because what we've learned early on is we can help a lot of different people, but where we add the most value, where people will talk most positively about us, is in this market. So if we know that's our differentiator, to your point, double down on it. This is where we need to focus our time. This is where we need to focus our resources. This is where we need to focus our knowledge base. When we created Tempo, and even at our prior firms, we never set out to be a group or a firm that was all things to all people. Mm-hmm. We wanted to be the standard in this specific market. And so everything we do is driven by how do we improve that type of client experience.
Amazing. I wanted to talk about practice management a bit. You said you have 11 employees, right? But I don't know if you started with 11 employees like at the firm before and you kind of brought people over, but I feel like after talking to so many advisors, there are bottlenecks at every stage. So like you can imagine maybe going from 0 to 100 million or 100 million to 500 million, right? Like list out 2 or 3 bottlenecks that you felt or seen as you grew the firm.
So taking back to the days of the broker-dealer world, and even at our prior RIA, growth was always there, right? That was never our problem. Our problem was at one point in time, we were hiring for need as opposed to future need. Right. And so we were always, one step behind, where it's, hey, we're looking at the firm, we're light on this servicing area, or we're light in planning. We need to hire someone now, instead of, we're going to see this type of growth. Who do we need to hire now so that they're ready to go when we experience it? Right. I think that's common for all advisory firms to a certain extent, especially when you're in the growth stage and you're not $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion firm. That was a huge gap for us. And also the inefficiencies that are created along the way, because the thing that we try to stay away from as a firm is we do this because that's how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. And I think that especially with the changes in technology and AI and automations, there's so much at your fingertips to leverage for the client experience that you have to be nimble enough to be able to change with the times. And so our biggest inefficiency, and I think my partners would agree with this, is we were so Excel spreadsheet heavy up until a couple of years ago. So clients would come in, they'd build their financial plan. We'd have a software program for it, as most firms do. But then we'd have insurance summaries on one Excel spreadsheet. We'd have investment summaries on another. We'd have beneficiaries on another. And it was all manual entry. And so when we formulated Tempo, we said, how can we change everything we're doing at the same time? And let's restructure everything we're doing, not just for today, but more for the scalability in the future. So we revamped our CRM system. That was a huge change and undertaking for us, but the CRM we used to be with never really had many updates built in. So we went to an all-in-one platform. So now instead of having all these spreadsheets, their insurance, their investments, their net worth, everything's tied into the CRM, their client portal for documents. So now they have one hub to go to where they can see their entire financial picture. That was a huge differentiator, and our clients have, expressed positive feedback all around on it. And then the synchronization with Altruist and with Schwab, who are our custodians, on all their monthly statements being pulled in, tax statements being pulled in. Now they're not searching 4 or 5 different programs for the information they need. It's all centralized. Yeah. And I think that's one problem that has been fixed, although it's never going to be perfect. But now it's, what are the other problems we foresee down the road that we can tackle today to eliminate?
Yeah, no client wants another login.
No.
I'll tell you that, right? If you can reduce logins, you already are standing out. So that's the key. I read actually something, I don't know if it was the Cleveland Observer or something like that, but it was you and your 3 partners on this like one pager. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about how you were leading with technology. Being that, AI is a buzzword, what other technologies are you incorporating into the firm? So
the CRM was our first piece, right? And we needed to get that right for the client impact. And so every decision we make has to be led with, how does this either benefit or will benefit the end client from an experience standpoint? And especially in the market we're in, if you do great work, everyone's going to know about it. And on the flip side, if you do poor work, everyone's going to know about it. So we need to be very diligent with anything we roll out to a client. Yeah. When we look at automations as an example. So we hired one of your former guests on here who built out several automations for us. Some firms may think it's small, but we look at it as hours in, hours out. So, for example, we have 3 staff people that handle the day-to-day for our client bases on servicing. And one of their roles is meeting confirmation emails that go out every Monday morning, 2 weeks prior to the review, with Teams links or addresses, depending on where we're meeting. What we looked at was that took about 6 hours of staff time combined in a week. And so we said, if we can implement some type of automated process to eliminate this, what does that free up where our staff and our team members can then focus directly with the client, whether it's phone calls with them, servicing needs? How do you develop that deeper client experience? Mm-hmm. So that was a simple automation that it was a no-brainer for us. Some of the others were, when we implemented the CRM, then we had to look at what note takers do we use.
Right.
We started with an old note taker back in the day, Copy Talk. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but you had mobile dictation service. You finish a meeting, you call this number, and for the next 4 minutes, you're just recapping a conversation that may or may not be typed up correctly that now your staff have to edit. So with the AI note taker, one of the values of that was pre-meeting notes. So to be able to scan the CRM for past conversations to look at points that we may want to hit on or revisit. But we have the meeting, it's taking the notes, it's taking the tasks, it's taking the trade discussions, and then it's putting all in action items. So now instead of us, having to manually send it, it's a button and it's click for, my person, Amanda, or, Lisa or Angie as an example. They automatically get the task. It's synced to the client folder. The notes are there, and then it's sent out in a follow-up email directly to the client, so they have the same information we have. I think that was a huge value. That was a time saver, but also it put the client more on the same page as us because they're getting the same notes. So now it's showing, here's exactly what we talked about, and they can make edits or say, hey, this looks great, add this to it for the next meeting. And it streamlines processes better. And it makes us, instead of sitting across from each other in a relationship, we're almost sitting on the same table with our clients saying, how do we better the situation?
Right. My general feeling about AI for the advisor or advisory firms is that it's going to supercharge not only small firms, but it's also going to supercharge your best employees to do their work more efficiently, right? So the advisors that are going to adopt this sooner will be able to increase the output of their already rock star employees because now they get more time in their day to focus on what really matters, which is being, better servants to your clients, right? Or just generally upkeeping the culture and the brilliance of the firm. So I think that everyone should be experimenting with how AI and some of the new technologies fit in their firm, and should do it quickly because it's changing quickly.
Yes, and to that point, at our prior RA firm, one of the benefits was we had an understanding of how the firm was run. So prior to taking the leap and starting our own firm, we got to see what are all the benefits, what are the challenges, what are the pitfalls that we need to avoid. But to that, there's always going to be the challenge of you're not the owner of the firm. So there's a certain amount of you have to follow that culture or those guidelines. We looked at it and said at a point in time, what would we do differently? Mm-hmm. And with our client base, with technology changing just at such a rapid pace, how do we become as efficient as we can now and as lean as we can? So as the technology changes, we're not in a position where it would cost too much or eat up too much time to make a change. We can still make that change for the long-term benefit of the firm.
Yeah, I like to ask this question to advisors because, we get on here and we're like, we're doing everything right? But you've been in the game for over 10 years running your firm with your current partners, right? So with that being said, if an advisor wants to scale from 0 to 750, give them the 1, 2, 3 on what they should do or what they should consider in that growth trajectory.
That's a loaded question.
It's heavy. But
it's heavy, and I think
there's
it's
no right way to do it.
I would say one thing about the broker-dealer we all started at was they told us early on, you either need to be first or you need to be different in the space. And we're not going to be the first in the RIA space. We're not going to be the first firm to work with the market that we work with, but we can be different. And so what is different about us from a mission, vision, purpose standpoint, or what is different from us from our relationship building standpoint that can have the biggest impact on the most amount of people in that market? Yeah. So I think identifying that early on and then figuring out what processes can we implement that drive that home and eliminate all the others.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that you start with mission. I remember Jason Wank, when I was practicing, gave me a piece of paper. It was like, do this. And the first question wasn't like, what type of practice I want to build. It's like, how do you want to spend your mornings? You know what I mean? Right? And what do you want your clients to take away from working with you? And that just drove it home for me. Like, it's not just about dollars and cents, right? It's about providing a better life and better advice for my clients and for myself, right? And if I can't do that, I'm going to burn out of this industry. Yeah. So super important and super interesting that you kind of said the same thing. Like, what do we want to give to our clients?
Yes. And what's the experience? Everything we do goes back to what's the end experience for the client, and what do we want them to leave a meeting thinking about and feeling. And so I think in any market, and I'll just speak for the market we're directly involved with, when clients come to you with concerns like, I'm not sure when I can retire, or what do I need to make sure that I do now so I don't run out of money, or I have 4 different types of stock compensation. How do I manage this effectively? And deferred comp programs and, pension plans and things like that. Those are all nuances, company specific. But if you look at that and you talk about their concerns around it of, can I retire, or how do I maximize this? While we can add a lot of value in that regard, our viewpoint is that's a very surface level conversation. Yeah. And we look at it as, what's the impact of those decisions going to be? So a lot of our front end conversations with prospective clients or new clients is more driven to, what's this going to allow you to do in the future that if you don't do this, you can't do? Mm-hmm. So for some people, it might be, well, I can start vacationing with my wife and or spouse, and she's kind of been put on the back burner a little while. I've built this career. Or, it might be, I want to coach my kids' little league, or I want to spend more time with my family while I'm young. Any of those are much more drivers of the decisions and the impact of that decision. And I think that allows the client to make decisions for their best interest based on what those actual impacts are.
Yeah, I like to say that classically trained financial advisors weren't trained to ask those questions, right? So when you sit across from your client and you're like, hey, we'll get to the money, right? But what does this allow you to do? Like, what are you trying to achieve? How does that strike them?
It's interesting, yeah, because I think they sit back and they think about it and they view us right from that point on as, we're no longer an advisory relationship. We're a trusted partner with them. And I think it changes the dynamic, because it's not about rates of returns as much. And it's not about, well, it saves me X amount on my tax return, or it allows me to live off of X amount in retirement. It's much more about, my family, my story, and you get it.
Yeah. Sometimes the magic is off the spreadsheet, mm-hmm. right? And that's something that I've learned in all types of relationships. So I definitely enjoy hearing that part from advisors. I wanted to ask a question about choosing your partners. Some advisors grow solo. Some advisors are better going together. It seems like Tempo is better together and growing really, really fast. What are some characteristics that advisors should look for as they consider maybe going into partnership with some of their closest colleagues?
You want to trust the people you work with. And I can honestly say I trust both my business partners completely. We do things the exact same way. We were trained the exact same way. So if anything ever happened where one of us couldn't be in a meeting, I have full confidence that they would operate my client base the same way that I would. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a key point right there. I also look at it and say, having differences is also a huge benefit. And so, we all were trained the same way. We're all friends. We trust each other. I'd like to think that they would trust me just as much as I trust them. But having differences, so our personalities are very different. Yeah. And so one thing we're a big believer on is we personality test before we hire, and we do it with ourselves too. And it's interesting. We use the DISC profile system, and we look at what are our strengths, what are our natural states where we're out of the office versus when we're in the office, because those are 2 different factors. And for myself, I'm more of a driver personality type. So, very clear cut, want to make decisions, want to move on to the next thing. And Bernie on the flip side is more of a high I influencer, where he wants to have those conversations. He wants a relationship build on the front end. And Corbin's a mix between the 2. And so when we look at it, is we see things from different angles, which is great, because when we have the conversations about what's best for the firm, it's not all just us agreeing all the time. We're very much, well, here's what I think. Here's what I think. Okay, how do we make this and blend all these different thoughts into what the right vision is for the future?
Yeah, and that comes with understanding like their personality types and how they navigate, whether that's conflict or success or growth, right?
Absolutely. And even when it comes to hiring staff or other advisors down the road, not only is it about the business or about the relationship or the advice being provided, but it's also about, are they going to be a good teammate? And whether it's, you look at sports like we were talking about earlier today, or you look at work, I mean, you want to have the right people, but you want to have personalities that all fit together.
Do you feel like you'll be in sort of the client-facing role for a while? Or is that something that as you scale, you have to kind of get off your plate? I was at Future Proof the other day, and we had a booth with Josh Brown and Jason. They did a talk, and I asked him a question. He was taking a question. I was like, hey, what do you think advisors need to do to grow? And he was like, at some point, you need to make the decision if you're going to work on your business or in your business, because you can empower people, one, right, to do the same work that you're doing so you can focus on taking this thing to the moon, or you can be bogged down by client work. For a firm that is growing as fast as yours is, like what does that future look like?
Very interesting question, because this is one of the conversations we've been having for the last couple of months. I don't think we'll ever fully be out of client-facing roles because we all enjoy that part of the business, and we have existing relationships that are family to us.
Yeah.
That being said, in order to scale a firm, we have to take ourselves out of being the face of the relationship. And we need to add new staff, new advisors, or take existing individuals that are in our firm and make them more client-facing, because the brand Tempo, our long-term goal is that stays a brand. And so that can't stay a brand if it's Bernie, Corbin, or Tim's clients.
Right.
That has to be something much larger than any of us. And so our goal is to step out of the client-facing roles where we're the face of it all and empower others either currently in the organization or that we hire into the organization, and then allow us to drive the growth and the future mindset of those individuals so that everyone can be successful. And now as we grow, we can service more individuals at more companies without it just being the three of us.
That's amazing, man. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited about what you've been able to do. What advice do you want to leave advisors with, right? I know they're coming here and they're like, man, they're growing super fast. We want to grow, and maybe we can adopt some of their practices. I'm a fan of what you do, but like, what words of wisdom can you give advisors? I'm sure this whole leap in starting Tempo was like one of the better things that you probably have done, right? You have full autonomy. That seems to be important to you. But talk to the advisor that may have been in your seat a few months ago, trying to make the decision to start their own firm or maybe go out with their partners. Take
the risk. I think that when we look back at it, we've never said we shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. We always say we wish we would have done this sooner. I think that's one piece. And two, one thing we've gotten really good at is being comfortable being uncomfortable, because this is a changing industry. The way things were done 10 years ago even isn't the way it's done today. And so you have to be adaptable to change, and you have to listen to the people that you trust, whether it's your business partners, it's your staff. You need to understand what you're trying to achieve is and build towards that and eliminate all the activities that aren't helping you get to that goal.
Amazing. You heard it here first. Take the risk, trust yourself, and go out and scale that firm. Tim, I appreciate you. And I appreciate all you for watching this episode of The Advisor Journey. If you want to learn more, go to altruist.com/podcast, and we'll see you here on the next one. Thank you for listening to The Advisor Journey by Altruist. Brokerage-related products and services are provided by Altruist Financial LLC, a member of FINRA/SIPC. Results may vary. Altruist and its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice.